is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Thomas Larkin, all the way from Lexington, Kentucky. He's a dentist, author, professor, lecturer, and entrepreneur. He has written 2 books on dental practice management and 2 books on oral wellness. With a background in clinical preventive dentistry, he brings a unique perspective to the emerging field of oral systemic practice. And he just got back from the oral systemic health meeting in Salt Lake City. Most recently, he worked as an assistant professor at the University of Kentucky College of Dentistry from 2009 to 2013. For 2 years, he was co-course director of the practice management class and developed the curriculum entitled The Business of Dentistry, a Mini MBA. In 2016, his MBA course became a part of the pre-launch curriculum for Jayme Amos's Idealpractices.com, a dental startup company. He also made several presentations on entrepreneurship nationally for Idealpractices. In 2017, he is a newly appointed clinical director at the Productive Dentist Academy, and the first project has been the creation of an oral wellness division to help educate and, most importantly, implement advanced prevention strategies into everyday practice. But what I think about you the most, and why I want you to be on the show, you've always been a huge defender for the solo practice. You think these kids should come out and have their own office, and you don't really advise that they go work for corporate America. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. And that's since mid-90s. I've been talking about entrepreneurship, but most recently now with the birth of the podcast and these guys getting really solid information outside of the university, because it's not going to work within the system, and I've tried. Okay. So, and you're probably familiar with the Life in Dentistry podcast.
Yes.
It's a newer podcast. Okay. That was a group that I kind of mentored, and there's a couple guys in there that bought a practice when they were juniors in dental school. And that was kind of my story. When I was with Jayme Amos, that was kind of a story that he picked up on, that I did my startup my 3rd year at Creighton.
On Dentaltown. My gosh, it's so cool. I started the podcast. The reason I started a podcast is I needed to start a genre on Dentaltown for a podcast. Yeah. And it was 850 days ago. And now we have mine on there, the Dentistry Uncensored. We got Dental Success Blog, the Dentist Freedom Blueprint. Jayme Amos has How to Open a Dental Office. He has 680,000 views on Dentaltown on that podcast. Then there's Dentist Metrics, Dental Implant Practices, Navigating Dental Insurance Podcast, Dr. Jesse Green, Delivering Wow with Dr. Nissa Holmes, Dental Up by Keating, The 8E8 Show by Joshua Scott, The Dental Marketer, The Life and Dentistry Podcast. That's the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
With Matthew Whitson.
Yes.
Nice. Yeah, he's on there too. I'm telling you, this Dentaltown app, they podcast is killing radio. The reason they're exploding is because these kids have an hour commute to work each day, and they can't listen to Trump and Russia and Putin and North Korea and ISIS. By the time you get to work, you don't even want to live. And they listen to quilting, cooking, dentistry. All the MMA fights with what's that MMA fight guy? Joe Rogan. I mean, so why would you want to just listen to your local radio station, which is half obnoxious commercials for car dealerships? Now, I like television. Like you watch television, you watch news on television. 20 minutes an hour is commercial, and the commercials are cut in half. The first half commercials are all these prescription pills that you should be taking, and then they list all the side effects. And then the last half hour of the show is all these class action lawsuit lawyers against all these prescriptions that they were advertising on the first half of the show. And then you can listen to a podcast commercial free. It's just amazing. But so what are you passionate about now? You're with the Productive Dentist Academy. Is that what your big deal is now?
So kind of a Cliff Notes deal. I'm teaching at Kentucky, and I'm writing a book on the dental entrepreneur. And I get to my chapter on dental hygiene, the business of dental hygiene, and I saw an advertisement for the one of the first AOSH meetings. Okay. And one of the things that made me get stuck in writing this chapter is that I had a very unusual hygiene department in my private practice. Now, this goes back to the late 80s. My dental hygienist used a microscope with a video monitor, and I was doing Kai's technique under the direction of Dr. Paul Kais and Dan Watt, okay? And so I didn't know whether I wanted to put that in my book. Fast forward, I meet Dr. Bale, And I said, man, this is a game changer. And you've had him on very recently, okay? This is a major, major game changer, what he's bringing to dentistry. So I decided to create an operations manual. It's called Dental Diagnostics in Support of the Townie Method, okay? So it took me 2 years to create it. And as of last month, it's the first approved CE. Dr. Bale and Dr. Townie have both approved and endorsed it. And this is where we pushed it out at AOSH to a very interested crowd.
So it was a lecture you gave?
No. So this is a course. It's an actual course that I created.
But did you give the course at the meeting?
No. We just had a booth there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Dr. Bale was speaking at the meeting, and Dr. Townie.
So explain the course. How long is it? Is it online? Is it a lecture?
It's online. Yeah, it's online. The Productive Dentist Academy. It's 11 hours of CE.
Oh my gosh.
30 videos. It just takes you through the entire protocol. So when you were interviewing Dr. Bale, you got the impression that he has to practice with a dentist. I call him dentistry's best friend. He's promoting dentistry like crazy. But what I knew that was unique about my past experience with the Casa Method was that the dentists are going to get stuck on the bacterial testing. Okay, they don't understand the testing. And I thought I would bring an entire protocol. And Bruce Baird calls me out of the blue last December. He saw my program and he said, this is a direction. He had met Dr. Bale. He said, I want to take Productive Dentist and create a division on this wellness because I believe in this, okay? And then he said, would you be interested in coming to work for me and bringing your stuff? And I said, absolutely, man. He's unbelievable. He and Vicky, they're crazy.
Yeah, they're amazing people. So I'm afraid you're seeing the Casa Method, and there's a lot of young millennials on here that aren't even old enough to remember that. I mean, that was something 30 years ago. Explain the Casa Method. Yeah,
it was just massively controversial, but basically the protocol that we need today was what he said. He said periodontal disease is a bacterial infection. The periodontists couldn't even decide that. They just wanted to cut the gums and get the calculus off of there. And they never addressed the bacteria. And Kai's was very controversial. I mean, I wish there would have been social media because all of the people were behind him, but organized dentistry just absolutely torched him for 20 years. So it starts with a microscope, and you look at the biofilm on every patient that comes in. It's a 25-cent test. That's why I loved it. And you start to educate the people that stuff on your teeth is alive, okay? They immediately connect with the visual. It's like the intraoral camera for perio. Now, I was using a microscope and a monitor before intraoral cameras were even around. Okay, this is a long time ago. Okay, so once you diagnose somebody's risk, your low, medium, high, however you want to call it, then you move into anti-infective treatment. That means antimicrobials. Back then, it may mean antibiotics. Today, we could use an antibiotic rinse and a laser. Okay, but the concept is, you don't use water in a Cavitron and just spread all that crap around. You have to do something anti-infective, which is essentially wound care, okay? So that's the shift that it took 25 years to dentistry to make, especially the periodontal community was very reluctant to put down the knife and stop cutting these gums. And that was my personal motivation because I was losing referrals. I was sending people to local periodontists, and they would come back pissed at me because they got these horrible results, painful results, and they were mad at me. And that's how that started my journey.
I really liked Dr. Paul Keyes and his technique, mainly because when you would take a toothpick and you would just barely wipe down in a 5-6 millimeter pocket, and you'd smear it on the glass slide, and the patient would get up and look down at it. And I could always tell the gum disease because if it was a really healthy mouth, the bacteria looked like they were all sleeping. And by the time it was really bad, they were all jumping around like they were all hopped up on caffeine. Yeah. And it was a big wow factor. And I've told myself for 30 years I should bring that back just for that. Just for that aspect of it.
That's what I'm doing. I put it in Bruce's office in February, and I'm going to let Bruce speak for because I was just in his office a month ago. And of course, Bruce's production on steroids, what an office to consult in. And I can't even tell you where his hygiene department has gone since February.
So did you bring back in a microscope?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Bruce had never seen one. Bruce has a microscope. I went to Wisconsin. I put one in Vicky's office. Vicky had never seen one. She's like, this is like the new thing. Okay, but here's the good news. The good news is the technology has improved. I'm talking about the scope itself. Okay, so we're in the process now of getting the latest and greatest with an iPad, and you can watch the bacteria in the iPad and pass it around. I mean, you know, we're packaging this entire thing with the microscope being the cornerstone of the therapy. You know, the therapy is pretty straightforward. Bruce has got a couple of twists that we're putting into the risk assessment, because I don't know if you're very familiar, but the reason why Bruce and I align so readily is that Bruce's whole thing is risk assessment, like John Coyce is doing. You know, they start with the diagnosis, and you want to look at periodontal risk, caries risk, and then you get into functional and aesthetic. So, so I'm just resurrecting, you know, old stuff, man.
Did you go talk to Paul Keyes before he died?
Yes, I have a new book. I got it autographed in September. I talked to him up to about 90 days before he died.
Because he died at 99. His wife was like 101.
101. If you don't think baking soda and hydrogen peroxide and the oral systemic, how about that for longevity? And he was sharp as a tack till the very end.
Wow, my gosh. I tried to podcast him, but I couldn't get anybody, you know, 99, he didn't have Skype and an internet connection. Right. And
yeah. Now, he autographed the book, and it's one of my, it's a prized possession.
Wow. So I hope you come out to my office and set it up there.
Absolutely.
And you know, your online module is, you said it's 11 hours long?
Yes.
The best free marketing you could do is put the first hour up on Dentaltown on the online scene. We put up 450 one-hour courses. They're coming up on 1 million views. And so many of these people put a 1-hour course, and it's like they get to meet you, they fall in love with the subject, you motivate them, you inspire them, and then it says, you know, if you want to take the other 10 hours, click here. That miite be an approach.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to. You know, and then we've had some talk about creating a topic on a thread. You know, I think I've emailed your sons and maybe, you know, been involved in that. One of the things that I would ask is that you have a miscellaneous thread called health, and that was where it was suggested to put prevention. You know, I'm listening to Jeff Knight a couple of weeks ago, the guy with the silver diamide stuff.
In Australia.
From Australia. Man, there's some stuff happening in prevention. What I would love to see you do is bump that up to a main category. Make prevention a main category. I will convince you on this Bale-Donine stuff. I'm going to show you some stuff here that, and I would just love to see it.
Okay, I'll tell you what. If you make me an hour online CE course, I'll make it a main category.
Perfect. You got a deal. You got a deal.
We're horse trading in Louisville right now.
Yeah, there we go. So can I back up a little bit, because I want to tell a really funny story. So what I want these young dentists, because I'm in circulation with a lot of young dentists, what I want them to know about you is that way before the internet, and probably in dental school, you were always paying it forward and helping people. So I don't know when this was, but it was in the 80s. And I reached out to you. It was the first time you were just out of school, the first time that you were in Dental Economics or one of the magazines. And I can't tell you what the subject was, but I called you, and obviously I asked you a question about office layout. And so this is pre-internet, and you sent me this. And I don't know if you can see.
Oh, I can.
These are your office plans, Health Co., Dr. Farran. And so my question is, this is mid-'80s, was I supposed to send these back?
Man, do you remember Health Co.?
Yeah.
My
absolutely.
God, they were the biggest dental supplier ever. They were out of Dallas. I mean, they were just the bomb. And wow, do you know
this thing is brown. It's weathered. I've carried it all over the country in my office. Okay, I've moved 3 times, and it looks like the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, this thing's got to be worth something.
Oh my God, that is so cool. Yeah, that was 30 years ago today, September 21st. Today, 30 years today. In fact, that's why I'm in scrubs. I just got back from my office.
So what were you doing with Healthco? Was that Today's Dental? Was it at that office?
Yeah, that was. I got out of school May 11, and Healthco got it plumbed and got it all up and open by September 21, 87, and that was my that was the opening 30 years ago
That
today.
is crazy.
And what's even crazier is my oldest boy. He's only 28. I mean, I can't believe I've been a dentist 2 years longer than my oldest son Eric. My God, the time flies. But yeah, it's amazing how these companies, like Healthco was the biggest guy, and he's gone. Yeah. And so many of these Fortune 500 companies are so arrogant, like Verizon, and so many of them are arrogant. And what they don't realize that the Fortune 500 in 1950, by 2015, 88% of those companies were gone. Only 12% made it from 1950 to 2015. It's like, so when you're dealing with these companies and you think, well, why do they do that? Just remember they have an 88% mortality rate.
Wow. That's amazing.
And the mortality rate is speeding up. I forgot off the top of my head what the mortality rate was. From 1950 to 2015, it was 88%. But from 2000, can you find that stat? How many S&P 500 companies are gone from 2000 to today? But the mortality rate's even going up faster and higher in dentistry. So do you think this oral systemic link? Do you think it's bleeding edge or leading edge right now? I mean, do you think this is about to take off in dentistry? I mean, you still have so many dentists that.
I think it's positioned. Here's the deal: if it wasn't for Bale and Doneen, and I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about that, I don't think it would be positioned to do much more than it has. I mean, when you look back to Bob Barkley in the 60s and 70s. There was an organization called the American Academy of Prevention. You know, Bob Barkley, next to Gordon Christensen, he was a rock star. He was the second most personal appearances of anybody in dentistry next to Gordon Christensen. Okay, I mean he was like
Bob Barkley. Figure.
Yeah, and he died in '78 in a plane crash. And that organization that he
where was that? Wisconsin.
He was in Iowa, I think.
Iowa when the plane crashed.
Yeah. So it had 8,000 members. I think it was called the American Academy of Prevention, and it folded up within a year. Okay, so when you ask me about this, you know, there have been several attempts at this, and I know I've seen you document stuff going back to Charles Mayo, Weston Price. I mean, there have been people been all over this, but here's the fundamental thing. I don't know if you're very familiar with the Concordia study, where they looked at healthcare costs for people under periodontal maintenance. That's a really, really important study. The insurance companies have the information on the tip of their hands right now that if someone is periodontally healthy, their overall healthcare costs go down dramatically. I'm talking 20 and 30% for heart disease and diabetes. The dentist is the only person that isn't aware of this yet. Okay, so this is all, you know, we're in the middle of a cluster with our healthcare system. This thing is going to have to be redefined. And that's kind of what I'm betting on, that prevention now is going to be a financial incentive. Okay? It's not going to be something people are going to do just because. Even though people...
So who's their dental director at United Concordia? He used to be the executive director of the American Dental Association. Is it Brennan?
No, I don't know.
It starts with a B. He was the American Dental Association executive director for probably over a decade, and now he's their dental director. And I was listening to him lecture, and they said the lowest hanging fruit, the most expensive disease from periodontal is that if a pregnant girl has gingivitis periodontal and drops a preemie is at least 1 million cash. Sure. Out of their actuarial savings account, and they just absolutely it just makes so much sense that every girl on United Concordia goes and gets her teeth cleaned every 3 months because they just don't want her to drop a 1 pound frog. And I mean that's just horrible. Not to mention they save those preemies, but have you ever seen them the 10-year follow-ups on a lot of these preemies?
That's tough.
Yeah, they get a, you know, they always talk about, we saved the baby, but it's you know, it'd been a lot better just to prevent the whole damn thing to start with.
Right. So there's your driver right there. Okay.
And Ryan just gave me the date from the year 2000 to today. 52% of the Fortune 500 is gone. It had a 50% mortality rate in the last 17 years. So we are in the fast lane. And I got to tell you this, too, because you graduated from Creighton. I went to Creighton, too. I was at Creighton from 80 to 83. You graduated from Creighton in 80. And remember when we got out of school, those little advances, it seemed like it was like every 5 years something minor would change. Now, 30 years later, there's so many damn things changing. And my friend who's a pharmacist across the street from me at Walgreens, Brad says he can't even keep up with all the new drugs that come out every year. He said he used to have all of them in his head, and now he can't even learn all the new ones. He can't even stay up on just the new ones.
Yeah.
So we are in an exponential growth.
It's a very disruptive period. And so that's why these alternative healthcare models, for instance, Bruce Baird, he has a nurse practitioner in his office now practicing the Bales method. Okay, you can go into the dental office, get a carotid ultrasound, get your labs drawn. That was one of the things I was going to show you because I just had mine done at his office a month ago. So I've been in the program about 3 years. Okay, so for your audience who's not familiar with the Bales method, I'm going to make it greatly simplified. Their concept is arterial health and inflammation. And if you haven't noticed, inflammation is now the subject. It's not cholesterol anymore. Okay, it's inflammation. And they are of the belief that the mouth is about a 50% contributor. Now, it's not just all perio. To be perfectly honest with you, he's more, there's an endodontic lesion that's a huge component of this inflammation deal, but that's a whole nother conversation, okay? So let's say that the mouth is a combined contributor of 50% of the inflammation. That makes the dentist a keystone player in the solution, okay? So let's make it super simplistic. I go in, get the carotid ultrasound, I look at the plaque. I mean, they look at the plaque, they draw the heart lab panel, Cleveland Heart Lab panel, and then they look at the periodontal pathogens, okay? So this is my current test. I just had it done, the Cleveland Heart Lab. This is the advanced biomarkers for inflammation. And you see that everything is green, all the boxes are green, so I'm within normal limits on these advanced inflammatory biomarkers. So within the Bales method, I have no periodontal pathogens, and my carotid IMT, I had moderate heart disease. I have moderate heart disease, but the plaque is beginning to transform from soft to heterogeneous to calcified, which is the reversal of heart disease, okay? So, once again, when I met Dr. Bale, before I'm going to go save the world, I was pretty much interested in saving my ass first, okay? I mean, I got to be transparent.
But what percent of your perfect scorecard is because you're in Lexington, Kentucky, and you've been washing Jim Beam through your arteries your whole life?
That's a big component.
Or was it wild turkey? Was it Jim Beam or wild turkey?
No, it's Woodford Reserve, man. Those are Walmart brands. Yeah, we got a lot better than that. Yeah. So that's the Bales method in a nutshell. And so what I'm doing is training the dentists. We're matching dentists and Bales physicians together, so they have to practice together, okay? Because the physician's going to say, I got to know your oral biofilm DNA. I need to know if you got pathogens. I need to see preferably a cone beam. I need to find the endodontic lesions, and so those are a couple of the main components that the dentist is going to evaluate. Sleep apnea is a part of the Bales method. I mean, it's a very cool deal. And so when I met him in 2013, I kind of made a bet, and I said, listen, this may go nowhere, and it may go somewhere. And if it goes somewhere, it's going to be a big deal. And I think Bruce became a patient. Everybody that really gets convicted of this becomes a patient, because what he explained to me, you see these outliers, these people that are perfectly fit and have heart attacks. They're runners and, CrossFit, and they have a heart attack. Well, there has to be an explanation for the outlier. And it is, most of the time it's going to be something oral.
So, yeah, inflammation is all the rage. It seems like so much what I read is that no matter what disease process is going on, it starts out with inflammation, and the C1 reactor and the C1 super sensitive. It's like if the doctor does a physical and he finds nothing wrong, but your inflammation is elevated. They're still
Right.
concerned and keep looking. But if you're
Oh,
not,
absolutely. And so
yeah,
really what happened with Dr. Bale, when he began this 15 years ago, I think he backed into this dental component. So he's looking at this inflammation, and he's kind of a detective, and he has a theory, and he says, I can't find it, I can't find it, I can't find it. And then by happenstance, somebody has an abscessed tooth, and they have the tooth out, and the inflammation goes dramatically down in the blood test, and he says, hey, we need to start looking in the mouth a little closer. And then what has happened over a period of time, that is when he's created these theories as to why the dentist is a franchise player in this whole process. And so I think this is where prevention, so what I've done is I've created this as kind of a bedrock for a prevention program. This is a really good rationale. I mean, you can do prevention for prevention's sake, which was what I did back in the 80s, but now you're a mainstream player in this whole thing.
you came out with a book last year on Amazon, I'm Free, a consumer's
Yes.
guide to saving thousands on dental care with simple preventive measures. It's the only book I've seen in dentistry where you have 100% 5-star ratings. And I also find it interesting on Amazon that people who bought your book also bought Beat the Heart Attack Gene,
Yes.
the revolutionary plan to prevent heart disease and stroke, who you've been talking about and we had on the show. Also, they also bought Brain Maker, the power of gut microbes to heal and protect your brain for life. And the third one was Your Mouth, Your Life, Your Connection of Oral Health to Whole Body. And I was listening to someone the other day that basically said, I said, well, what's around the corner? And they said, that when you look in the mirror, you see a Homo sapien with about 1 trillion cells that you got from your mom and dad. But from your mouth to your anus is 10 trillion cells where none of that DNA came from your mom and dad. And that has more to do with your health than the 1 trillion you got from your mom and dad. And that they think that in the future that to get control of Streptococcus mutans and periodontal, all these bugs in our mouth will be more about changing the gut microbiome in your body. Because if you had a healthy gut, because we've all seen, I mean, have you not seen, how long have you been practicing dentistry?
Clinically, I practiced for 17 years.
Okay, did you see patients that basically had no home care and never had cavities or periodontal disease?
Absolutely.
And then I had a hygienist who I saw every 3 months, and she had perio surgeries and continued to lose teeth, and she'd always cry and she was traumatized. And I was always trying to be an armchair psychologist saying, obviously it's not your fault. There's something else going on. But you can tell by being a dentist. I mean, sometimes you touch people's saliva and it's just water. Other times you touch people's saliva and you can pull it up 3 or 4 inches. So that gut I'm talking about that book. People who bought your book also bought The Power of Gut Microbes to Heal and Protect Your Brain for Life. I think we're going to be preventing decay and gum disease by controlling the gut microbiome in another decade. Do you see that coming?
Oh yeah, that's the emerging science. I'm seeing that everywhere. In fact, there's one of the Cleveland Heart Lab tests now goes into the gut thing too. So yeah, there's no question that that's emerging.
Yeah, and what's really bad, the saddest thing in it, is that the fastest way to ruin your gut microbiome is eat a whole bunch of sugar, because the bacteria that feed on the sugar kill so many of the great bacteria. And they had this guy, I watched this one documentary where this researcher went to the most primitive tribe in Africa that still was nomadic and living off the land, and he only stayed with them 10 days. And they ate nuts, berry, whatever they ate. He only ate that stuff for 10 days, and they took a stool sample before he left and did the analysis, and after 10 days he had a completely different gut microbiome.
Wow. That's amazing. And that also makes me think something of, we need to talk about antibiotics and antibiotic resistance. That is a tremendous problem right now. And one of the resources that I'm kind of bringing to the table, I'm bringing a lot of relationships to the table, is somebody I met 3 or 4 years ago who you interviewed is Jim Hyland from Toronto, from Oral Vital, that has the patented antibiotic rinse. Okay. So we're making this a part of a recommended protocol too, because systemic antibiotics for periodontal disease, if you believe in the whole gut thing, It's not a good thing. But you can take them orally, gargle, spit out, and you don't have a systemic effect, okay? And you had a great interview with Jim Highland.
Did you grow up in a very agricultural area?
No, I was in Omaha.
You were in Omaha? Well, growing up in Omaha, anyway, that was a lot of cattle, but 80% of all the antibiotics used in the United States are fed to farm animals, and a third of all my friends were wheat farmers, corn, milo, cattle, and I can remember being 10 years old asking those guys, well, why do you give them antibiotics? And he goes, because it makes them fat. And when you give antibiotics, they get obesity. And when you look at identical twins, where one had an ear infection and got antibiotics one time, and the other identical twin didn't get the antibiotics, and by age 10 years old, one is already headed towards obesity. And what's bizarre is if 80% of all the antibiotics are given to humans, given to animals, because they know it kills gut microbiome and makes them obese. Right. And now I've been reading where they're doing the most common transplant in the world is a fecal matter transplant. Yeah. And they're taking obese mice and doing fecal transplants from skinny mice, and the obese mice starts losing weight.
I can't. I'm having problems with that visual. I don't know whose I want.
But isn't that amazing? So when you give people antibiotics and they're eating everything they eat is out of a box, cereals, prepared foods, packaged foods. They're not getting any natural vegetables and all that stuff like they have been for the last 2 million years. This is really exciting new science.
Yeah. Oh, no question about it. No question.
And you know who invented the fecal matter transplant?
No.
Same place, Australia, where they were watching the Americans doing all these the stomach ulcer surgeries. Yeah. And this woman doctor down there saying, how is this an infection? She goes, it's like an ulcerated area. And she's the one who figured out it was H. pylori bacteria and started treating it with antibiotics. Well, it was another woman physician down under in Australia who saw this kid after he'd done chemo laying there lifeless, and he'd cry when he would poop, and his anus, the skin was shedding, and she's looking at him. She said, I think the chemo killed everything in his intestine. So the mother was there, and she said, go to the bathroom in this stool, and I'm going to put it in an enema. So she gave this little 6-year-old kid who just got through chemo a complete enema of his mother's bowel movement, and she said in 24 hours he snapped back to life. Wow! And now post chemo, they're starting to do this all over the place, and America usually isn't the first place. It's usually going to be Australia, Scandinavia, these people. But yeah, it's amazing.
That is.
So if you quit drinking Jim Beam for a week. That's what we should do. We should have you poop, do your analysis of your sample, stop drinking Jim Beam for 1 week, and see what happens to your your gut microbiome. So you talk about 6 degrees of separation. What do you mean by that in dentistry?
Well, are you talking about you in particular?
Yeah.
No, what I meant, I think, in the thing you had me fill out was the times where our paths have crossed, but you didn't know it, okay? The other one, I want to ask you a question about this in particular. This is in heavy circulation on the internet, okay? And I remember this was a period of time, I don't know who's been putting this out, but I saw it yesterday, where this was an attempted coup of the ADA by you and Woody, and what was that about? I mean, you were very militant if I remember correctly.
Yeah, when I was young, I was filled with piss and vinegar. Now I'm very mature, and but I still have to name my podcast Dentistry Uncensored. No, but basically, capitation was coming out, and the ADA had a full-time legal department. They weren't doing anything. They were burning through, their dues are north of $200 million a year. And I wanted $1 million ad during the Super Bowl. I wanted this ad where it was a glass of water and this slow motion upper denture was falling into the glass of water with James Earl Jones' voice saying, in the United States, by age 64, 10% of Americans have 0 teeth. Then here comes the lower denture splashing into the water. By age 74, 20% of Americans have 0 teeth. Call your dentist today and get your teeth cleaned. I thought that would have been for $1 million. So they wouldn't do they wouldn't do television advertising. They wouldn't sue the insurance companies for all this misrepresentation and all this stuff like that. And I think Rich Maddow had the Profitable Dentist newsletter. Woody Oakes had the Profitable Dentist newsletter. The Maddows had the Maddows report. I had the Farran report that later, when I added the internet to it, called Dental Town. Gordon Christian was the most famous speaker on earth, still is to this day. And we went down there, and I was very proud that the president-elect, the executive director, they all sat, and they let us all rant for hours. And by God, if they didn't sharpen their pencil, and Svitkus was the attorney back then, and he started subpoenaing all these insurance companies, and they started going after him. And as far as advertising, I'd say the ADA on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, they're a social media maverick. I mean, the brush twice a day, 2 minutes, floss for bedtime. So I thought they listened very, very well. And I think what got their attention is at that time, the American Medical Association just went under 49% members. And dentistry is about 67. And they saw people quitting the American Medical Association, which I last heard, it's like around 25% now of the doctors are so disillusioned with the AMA. So the American Dental Association is listening. I've had a couple of their presidents and come on the show, the executive director. I mean, they got 2 out of 3 dentists, and they want the other 1/3, and I think they're extremely responsive. And a lot of dentists bitch about the ADA, but it's kind of like your parents. I mean, there's a lot of things you can whine and complain about your mom, your dad, your grandma, your grandpa, your sisters, but they're still your family. I mean, they're the only people that represent dentistry in Washington, D.C. Yeah. I mean, they're the only ones. So if you don't like them, I mean, you graduated from school with a $350,000 investment to becoming a dentist. You ought to support your only trade association that's going to go there and fight for you. I mean, there's dental therapists. There's all kinds of issues. And the other thing that the ADA wasn't good at is they don't tell everybody what they're doing. They got 300 people at 211 Chicago Avenue who are working all day, 5 days a week, but they don't tell you all their legislative accomplishments, all these bills, all these things they took out of, there's 50 different states. So, they do a lot of work, but they don't toot their own horn, like.
So let me ask your opinion on something. So we've got a mesothelioma settlement, a tobacco settlement. Why has there not been a Mountain Dew settlement? I mean, I just can't see that those don't line up accordingly to have resources for all of the damage that's being done by refined sugar.
And the cigarette settlement is the dumbest thing, because if you study smoking, when World War II broke out, Americans didn't smoke. And then they drafted 6 million boys and sent them overseas for 4 years, and they issued them a pack of cigarettes every single day for the whole 4 years because they thought it was good for their nerves. So 6 million boys came back addicted to smoking, and that's when smoking exploded. And then what does the government do? Turns around and sues the tobacco companies. And then the tobacco companies, where you live in Kentucky, have for years been trying to study, well, can we make a safer cigarette? What is actually causing lung cancer? And who has shut them down? The government, because they're like, you can't make a safe cigarette. You can't even call Marlboro Light because they'll think it's safer. So the government, the Pentagon started the smoking craze. The government's the one that wouldn't let Philip Morris study safer cigarettes, and then they end up suing them. I mean, it kind of reminds me of General Electric. During World War II, General Electric kept going to the Pentagon when they're making all these ordnance and bombs, and they said, what do we do with all this toxic byproduct waste? And the Pentagon said, pour it in the Baltimore, the river. So they did, all during World War II. And then 30 years later, who wants to sue GE for the cleanup?
The government.
And they're like, dude, you were detonating nuclear bombs. We could have dumped that shit right there where you were detonating Trinity. We asked you where we should dump it, and you're the one who told us, no, you're not trucking out there. It's kind of like these nuclear reactors. They're always afraid that, it's going to let out some radiation. Japan when it had the big earthquake and it got hit by a tidal wave, it let out some radiation. Everybody's all freaked out about it. Are they insane? The United States and Russia detonated 1,800 nuclear bombs above ground. Those little reactors, that'd be like a chipmunk pissing in the ocean. I mean, when they detonated those bombs, there was radioactive material 5,000 miles away instantaneously. I mean, so people don't have anyway. Don't even get started. The government is so. Well, actually, I just think people are crazy in general. I mean, they're just sapiens with clothes on.
The human conditions. So let me ask you. Are you going to be at Voices of Dentistry? Are you familiar with that?
Well, they're having it in my backyard. They're having it in Scottsdale. Right. When is it going to be?
And I think it's the last weekend in January is what I've heard. And
who's the organizer?
So that would be Justin Moody, Alan Mead, Mark Costas.
Yeah, none of them. I haven't heard from any of them. Justin Moody is my good buddy. Alan Mead has been on the show. Mark Costas. I mean, I haven't heard anything from him.
Okay. Well,
are you gonna be on the show?
No. So basically, what we're doing, because that was actually where I met Vicky. The first time I met Vicky was at Voices in January. And so we're going to be a sponsor. I've got a private Facebook group called the Pathogen Lounge, where we're kind of creating a group to share information on the oral systemic. And we're going to have a physical entity at Voices where we're going to have workstations with a microscope, with the biofilm DNA, with lasers, showing people all of these protocols of advanced prevention. And that'll be a part. That's what we're talking to them about doing. So,
who are you talking to about that?
Let's see. I don't know.
Well, that's kind of like, I have a Townie meeting, so that's their meeting. So I don't want to go barge in their meeting or whatever. If they invite me, I'll go. If they don't invite me, I get it. I mean, Townie meeting is tough when you have a meeting because, several hundred of your buddies are emailing me. I want to speak. But you can only just have a few speakers every day for 3 days. So it's kind of I won't budge in the show, but what's the date on that?
It's January 28th pops in my head, but you'd have to go to voicesofdentistry.com.
Well, that's a beautiful time of the year in Scottsdale, January 28th. My God, that is crazy. Crazy good. So you also talk about, one of the reasons I called you the most was the fact that you've always been a champion for the solo practicing dentist. And and you also talk about building and selling a dental practice while in school. Do you think that's possible?
No, that's not possible. That was just some of my insanity as a 20-some-year-old. I mean, I don't even know who that person is. I mean, you know how you get risk-averse as you get older. But when I had some students 2 years ago in Kentucky come to me as juniors and say, we want to buy a practice, I was like, dude, you're a junior. And they said, yeah, but you did it too. And they end up, they are 3 months out of dental school and they have 3 practices now. Okay. Now I've mentored them through the process, and these weren't startups. I would call them a hybrid startups. These were distressed practices on a real bad trajectory with some sick doctors or whatever. And so these weren't your typical acquisitions. They had no web presence, no website. So I was able to kind of make all of those things happen. And it's an interesting little niche, but it's been a great story that we're documenting really closely with the Life in Dentistry podcast.
Yeah, tell those guys. Are these the guys that you're talking about?
Yeah. Matt Whitson and Daniel De La Cruz are the two practice owners.
Well, tell them to come on the show and talk about their podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I definitely. Well,
and CC me on it, Howard at Dentaltown, and then the other Howard is in charge of the online CE, so his name's Howard Goldstein, so he's Hogo at Dentaltown. But invite those guys to come on the show and CC Howard Goldstein, because if you got 11 hours of module, I think the best marketing would put the first hour up, and then we'll move that to a main category. But you just said something extremely profound that these kids, it's worth repeating, and that is, when I ask them, I always ask them, email me, howard@dentaltown.com, and tell me who you are, because I don't know who's downloading this on iTunes and all that stuff. I was surprised that about 25% of all the emails, they're still in dental school. They're D1, D2, D3, D4, and all the rest are pretty much under 30. They're all millennials born after 1980. But what he just said that's so profound is when you get older, you get risk adverse. And so what you do is you get out of school and you go work for a corporate, and they're paying you $1.50 a year, 150, 170. So then you go get in a house and you get married, and you get, and as you get older, you're like, well, I kind of got a nice gig going. Do I really want to risk all this stuff? And I'll tell you what, I walked out of dental school May 11, had my office open September 21. So I got out of school May 11 at 24. Turned 25 August 29th, got my office open September 11, and had 4 boys in 60 months. And there's never a good time to start a business or have a kid. I mean, if you're thinking about having a kid, you better have one right now, because, you know, I mean, they're even doing it in high school where they're making these dolls that mimic a child and crying, waking up and all that. And they send it home with these 12, 13-year-old girls, and a third of them come back to school after a week and say, I'm never having a kid. And there's another phenomenon you see in big Catholic and big Mormon families where the oldest daughter, you know, of a family of like 6, 8, or 10 kids, she was changing diapers and babysitting the babies her whole life. And when those girls get out of the house and get married, they don't have any romantic notion of a kid. They say, hell, I raised my 5 younger siblings, so they're most likely to never have a child. If you're the oldest girl in a family of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 kids, they don't have kids either. So the best time to have a kid, I mean, my 4 boys, the single best decision I ever made, but I couldn't do it at 55. Right. I mean, shit, I can't even adopt a puppy at 55. It's just too exhausting. So when do you open up a dental office? Before you even think about it. Just go buy one or build one tomorrow. You're not going to die. But and it's just, and last part of this rant, same thing in the military. The military has several thousand years of data. The only people that they can charge and order into gun battle and gunfire and cannons is young males. By the time they started getting desperate and recruiting 30-year-old males, they'd say, hey, Thomas, take that gun and charge that hill. And you're like, are you shitting me? There's freaking cannonballs flying over the top. And women at every age say, I don't think that's a good idea. I think you're going to get killed doing that. So who is the only boy that will take? And look what the military does with risk. All these Purple Hearts and ribbons. They're trying to encourage all this insane risk taking with your own life and limbs and health. So best time to open up a dental office is in dental school. The next best time is the day you graduate. And the worst time is after you get fat, lazy, older, and sedentary and start to analyze how much work it's going to take. And then you make a rational decision that, I just think. And what does corporate dentistry do? They pay you enough money so that they can kill all your dreams. Yeah, you got it. Yeah. No, that's it in a nutshell. Yeah. So I'm riding with those guys right now and enjoying the hell out of it. I mean, you know, if I can't do it, the next best thing is to mentor somebody with that kind of energy and that kind of fearlessness. And I got a group of them doing it right now. It's great. So when you were in dental school for 2 years, teaching from 2009 to 2013, co-course director of the practice management class, the Business of Dentistry at Mini MBA, did you think, you know, we keep hearing the millennials are different. They're different. And the class is half women. Do you think when you were in dental schools that those class people's psychic mind as far as entrepreneurship, owning my own practice was different than 30 years ago when you and I were at Creighton? Well, you know, when I graduated from Creighton, so there were 2 girls in a class of, I don't know, my class was 60 or something. But there was an expectation that every one of us was going into private practice. You know, you had a handful of smart guys, the geeks that were going to be specialists, but everybody was going into private practice, okay? So I think when you have a built-in expectation, but here's what I'm unhappy about today. So I take a freshman class first week and I say, how many people here wanted to become a dentist because you have a role model, a mentor, a neighbor, whatever, who's independent and has kind of a cool lifestyle? All the hands go up. You come back second semester, senior year. How many people here are on a path of freedom, independence, entrepreneurship? And it's like 2 or 3. So somewhere between freshman and senior year, that just got all beat out of them, okay? It's actually being, you know, the marketplace is beat out of them. I don't think there's full disclosure as to what this is all about, this whole dental school process.
And I think corporate dentistry is actually, it's kind of letting dental schools off the hook. They've never wanted to train people on on business, okay? They've never wanted to. I mean, there's some exceptions, and I'm generalizing. And now that everybody can get a job, they don't give a rip about business training, you know? So that's kind of the state of that. As far as like the millennials, I hate characterizing, you know, I try not to do that, because I look at this group of people I'm working with right now, and they're as sharp and as hardworking as anybody in our classes, okay? So you can't do that. That's not fair.
Yeah, I hate it when people, I'm 100% Irish. I hate it when people say that all Irish people are crazy like Conor McGregor and alcoholics, when only 38% of Irish are alcoholics. 62% of us are not. Tell us about your connection with Jayme Amos, who has 680,000 podcast views on Dentaltown, on the Dentaltown app. Crazy. So, that's got to be
Jayme
that he has more views and dental podcasting than anyone.
So he kind of started this process out. I had started on this Bale Donine kick where I'm writing the manual, and I get a random email from Jayme. Okay, so I'm leaving the university, I'm working in a practice, and I'm writing this manual. And he said, I read in your bio that you started a practice in your dental school. Would you I need to chat with you. And he was just starting the business. It was just he and he had his manager. And he said, that's a great story. Would you like to do a podcast? So I started doing some of the initial podcasts with Idealpractices, and he just got a great response, because not only was I talking about startups, I was talking about wellness, I was talking about where I saw opportunity. I'm very optimistic about where dentists can position themselves. And so, so he took my book, my book was basically a gift to the senior students. I never even was going to sell it. And so he created his MBA training for his startup. And so I was involved in that until Bruce called me. And so I was a part of that. And I saw that podcast thing that you're talking about, the penetration of the message, and it's amazing. It's amazing.
That's why his podcast went off so well. It was because you were his secret sauce guest.
Initially,
yes. Isn't he down in Florida and has some place in the Caribbean?
Right.
I wonder if Irma messed him up.
I don't know.
Did he get hit by Irma? I was looking at the pictures this morning of Puerto Rico. How sad.
Oh, terrible.
Oh my God. In the Florida Keys, I took all 4 of my boys for a wedding down there for their cousin. And I love the Keys. Like, oh my God, I love the Keys. That place looks like a lawnmower hit it.
Wow.
Crazy. So my God, that was the fastest hour. But I just want to keep you for a few more minutes. What's the call to action? Should they go to your website? How do they? What do my homies do next? What's their homework for today? Your website is tomlarkin.com. LARKIN.
That's my personal site. So if you go to productivedentist.com and you want some more information about the whole Bale Donine and this thing kind of interests you, go to productivedentist.com/AOSH, AAOSH. So what we did is we created a splash page for last weekend's event.
Tell them what AAOSH stands for.
The American Academy of Oral Systemic Health. And so we've got a splash page there where it has all the information about my course. And, I want to jump on making a course for you. I think that's a great opportunity for us, because I really want to bring all these resources into one place and really help propel this forward, because I'm kind of a believer.
And where is Bruce Baird in Texas? What city is he in?
He's in Granbury, which is I think it's an hour south of Dallas-Fort Worth.
Yeah, and I just want to say a couple of things that, so many, we have so many self-limiting beliefs between our ears. I mean, dentists just, they're their own worst enemy. They get up every morning, they say it's the economy, it's the insurance, it's my stupid patients. Bruce Beard was doing the whole time I've known him. When he was telling me his number, does about 4 million a year. And I got to tell you a couple of things about that. Number one, I'm always telling you that the people, supply and demand, the people who are 1 to 2 hours away from a major airport usually are practicing in an area where there's one dentist for every 3 or 3,500 people. By the time they get to downtown Dallas or North Scottsdale or out there in East Mesa, there's a dentist for every 500 people. So he's out in the middle of Granbury doing 4 million a year, and then you're sitting there in Salina, Kansas, saying, "Well, the only people that do that are in Manhattan and Miami and San Fran." It's like Bruce Beard's doing it in Granbury, Texas. Would you say that's an uppity yuppie community?
I've been there twice. It doesn't look like it to me.
Oh my God! I mean that's a city. That's a city where the people get excited when they build a new Walmart, and he's crushing 4 million a year, and it's about, he's a people person. You know, I think it was funny on this global warming thing how so many people are so confused of why so many people don't believe it. Well, hell, look at when the theories of evolution came out. It was violent opposition to evolution and all these great science theories. But when they come out with these theories, they don't try to understand that there's always violent opposition to any new theory, but they talk down to them and they're condescending and, well, all the PhDs know it. You're from Granbury, Texas, you moron idiot. And that's why they all flipped them off and didn't believe it instead of and then with Americans, that they all believe if it's too good to be true, it's not going to be true. And then I thought it was funny in the New York Times yesterday where they have an article on global warming, and then they have another article about how this numerologist has predicted the end of the world, and it's, of course, November 13th or something like that. So you're running a newspaper that's saying global warming and the end of the world in the same New York Times, and everybody says if it's too good to be true, it's not, and if it's too bad to be true, it's not. The truth's somewhere in the middle. And I think so many dentists talk down to their patients. So many are condescending. Every meme I've seen by a consumer on the hygiene. What's the difference between your parents and your dentist? Your parents talk down to you about cleaning your room, and your dentist talks down to you about cleaning your teeth. And I think Bruce Beard's and Vicky's secret sauce is how they emotionally connect with their patients. And now not only could he sell $4 million a year in dentistry or in Granbury, but now he's selling total wellness, carotid stethoscopes, taking blood work, because they trust him, because he's a good old boy from Texas. And there's nothing pretentious about him. There's nothing condescending about him. He's a dentist that everyone would want to go to the bar with.
No question. I'm going to be with him all next week, and he's everything and more. It's been a real honor to work with him.
Yeah, and you know what? You ran 15 minutes late, and the lady up front's all pissed off, and she's taking it out on the front desk. And then after that procedure, you go back in your office and close the door, where my staff will tell me the next lady's really upset. I'll walk the patient out there that I got done, and then I'll turn to the lady, "Hey, Betty, you know why I'm 15 minutes late?" Then I'll start punching Tom Larkin on the shoulder saying, "I haven't seen this guy for 3 years. He shows up unannounced, needs a gosh darn root canal, and I'm sorry, I didn't run 15 minutes late. This bozo right here made me run 50 minutes." And they're all laughing, and she's like, "Oh, it's okay." And then the receptionist stand there like, "What do you mean she's saying it's okay?" It blows her mind, because you can really get mad at the receptionist, the assistant, the hygienist, but when the doctor walks in the room, whether it's Bruce Beard, myself, it's all behind. And I'll even tease some patients. You should give her $5 to buy her a Starbucks coffee for making her wait 15 minutes for you. Last time I gave you a floss, you thought it was a broken yo-yo, and you only brush your teeth twice a year, and my hygienist does it for you both times, and they're all laughing and giggling. It's the human side, and that's what, if you go down the Productive Academy, listen to how Vicky talks to people and patients. Listen to how Bruce talks to people and patients. That's the secret sauce, not all that alphabet soup stuff behind your name that you got your diplomat in the academy who gives a shit. Talk to people on their level.
Yeah, that's the secret sauce. That's
hey, so you're going to be in Scottsdale at the Voices of Dentistry. And you got to. I'll see you when you're in town.
Okay. No, that would be an honor. And we're going to put a system in your office too.
I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't wait to see whose bacteria are jumping around faster, mine or yours.
Very good.
All right.
All right.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.